to be talking about seizing the generative AI moment for intelligence advantage. And Matt, I know you joined me in welcoming Chip Usher with the Special Competitive Studies Project. Chip, it's nice to see you. Thank you so much for being here. The conversation is going to be moderated by Teresa, Shea, and Frank Cilluffo. I'm just making sure Frank is here. Frank is the director of the McCrary Institute for Cyber and Critical Infrastructure and Security. He's at Auburn University.
Thanks so much, Suzanne, for having us today. And Chip and Frank, it's great to have an opportunity to chat with you guys. I know Suzanne did a little bit of an introduction, but you both have had such impressive careers. I know, Chip, you being in the Intel community for upwards of 10 years, I think, and then, now being with the Special Competitive Studies Project as their Director of Intelligence. And just to all our listeners out there, if you haven't checked this SCSP website out, go check it out. They've got their latest work, especially on generative AI and the future of innovation power, is worth a quick read. And Frank, you having served us as a nation, starting from the time that you were the special assistant to the president of Homeland Security after 9/11, that must have been a very exciting time. And now you're down heading up the director of the McCrary Institute there in Auburn. So thank you very much to both of you for joining us. And I thought we'd start just with a little bit of laying the groundwork here. What an exciting time to be in the intelligence business, right? With this possibilities of artificial intelligence and all the good it can do. And I recognize that, there's bad that it can do as well, but the ability to stop that and protect against that is rather exciting, I think. And so if we could just start with a little bit of what you guys think the biggest challenges and opportunities are for the IC in this space. And Chip, would you start? And then Frank, if you could jump in.
Thank you, Teresa, for the kind introduction and skipping over my real age. I actually just completed about 32 years with the intelligence agency, not just 10. Maybe you can tell by the gray beard. But happy to dive in on this. I'll focus first on the opportunities and then talk a little bit about the challenges, because I think the opportunities are really the compelling thing for us to focus on, and they're really exciting. When I started as a CIA analyst 30 years ago, I had my computer system, and every day you would come in and read your traffic, and it was onerous at first. Gosh, I had 100 pieces of traffic to go through. By the end of my career, it was thousands, it was tens of thousands. You couldn't get through it all, and I'm not even kind of counting all the things that I knew I was missing that were happening in the outside world and on the internet and off the classified systems. Generative AI and AI tools in general, I think, finally offer the hope for the IC of getting ahead of or getting their arms around the big data challenge. And that is extremely important and powerful. And let me give you a real kind of life example, and I'll kind of protect names and so forth to protect classified information. But towards the end of my career a few years back, the collectors came to us and said, "We have terrific news. We've cracked the network of a foreign country's WMD system, and this is terrific." And we were stunned by the collection coup. They gave us a terabyte of data. That data was in a foreign language, and we only had a few linguists who could read that. Much of it was technical, high-level technical stuff. We had, brainiacs around who could make sense of it, but they were also few in number. And then, the percentage of chaff in this terabyte of data was immense. So what did we do? We literally took a team of experts offline, stuck them in a room for months going through that data. What generative AI, offers a promise of is to cut through a data challenge like that in days, in hours, perhaps. What I could imagine if we had received this information today and we're applying the Gen AI tools available now, it would have quickly translated the information into English, right, and done a good job. It would have quickly sorted the wheat from the chaff. This is all just the bureaucratic mumbo jumbo you don't need to worry about. Here's the hard science. This 30% of the data is what you need to focus on. And within that, it might have offered some real analytic insight. For example, here's all the reports and information having to do with enrichment, right? Here's another set of data that has to do with weaponization. And you could kind of divide the work more smartly and intelligently. And it might have gone further. It might have said, we've analyzed all these emails, and here are the top 10 foreign government officials that seem to matter on this project because they're on all the emails. They're making all the decisions, right? So, I think the power of this for the intelligence community, from collection, processing to analysis, is absolutely immense. There are going to be challenges, and I'll just touch on these quickly because I know we want to get to Frank and some of the other topics. But the first is, I'm sorry, but the IC's job just got a lot bigger, right? We have to worry now about generative AI. What has China got? What's it doing with it? How about the Russians? What about other countries, right? This is a new area of technology that we have to learn and understand and care about. And our adversaries are already using it, as already was discussed in the previous panel, with disinformation, thinking about cyber attacks in a new way, potentially using it to create, other weapon systems and that sort of thing. So, I'm sorry, but the job just got bigger. The second is an adoption challenge. My father was a fighter pilot, and he was trained to take his F4 to the limit of the envelope of capabilities of his aircraft to stay ahead of his adversaries. The problem is, if you push your aircraft too hard, too fast, you're going to crack up and crash. Well, the IC has a similar balancing act it will need to strike with AI. We're going to need to push the envelope and use these tools to expand our capability and stay ahead of China and other autocracies. But we have to be careful because, it is not acceptable to give the President of the United States a PDB generated by an AI that is hallucinating. Can't do that. So we're going to have to think about how we carefully and responsibly implement these tools, but keep pressing to do so. And then the third area, and then I'll turn it over to Frank, is, the transformation challenge. This is going to change the nature of every knowledge industry across the world, including the IC.
Everything Chip said, I obviously agree with. Very well said. I'll take the opposite tact of him. I'll start with some of the challenges and then go to some of the positives. I've always been a believer that a pessimist is an optimist with experience. So we'll start with the doom and gloom a little bit and then go and then flip the equation, because quite honestly, the benefits far outweigh the risks here. The reality is here, if you have dirty data going in, you're going to have better dirty data going out. And we need to make sure that we have trust in the data and that deficit and that gap is filled. Obviously, security and privacy issues are of significant consideration, not only how we can exploit AI for security purposes, but also security for AI and of AI. That's going to become a bigger set of issues, and adversarial AI, and obviously we're thinking largely here of our peer competitors, China, Russia, but also Iran, North Korea, and others. You don't need to always be right to cause a really bad day for the good guys. So we got to focus on some of that. And many of those challenges are what industry faces, but obviously the consequences of getting that wrong are much more significant in the government's sake. And let's be serious, call me old-fashioned, but there are things I want to see only someone who's sworn to the Constitution doing. And that will always be the case. We've had the same sorts of discussions in terms of private security and government. There are certain decisions and functions that only someone who's sworn to the Constitution should be making, in my eyes. And identifying what those issues are essential, I think, in terms of going forward. Obviously, guardrails for misuse and accountability are very important. And Chip, I loved your PDB analogy. I use that one quite a bit, but you can also say the same thing for whether you're providing information to a combatant commander in a region or the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I mean, at the end of the day, getting something wrong here has consequences. So we want to make sure we get it right. On the positive, I mean, here's the reality. Maintaining, ideally, technological superiority should always be a priority. And it is even more essential when it comes to AI, machine learning and some of the new technologies that are not tomorrow, they're here and now, right now. And the bottom line is you either get on the bus or you get run over. And we cannot afford to get run over here because we know what our adversaries are doing in this space. I'll just put up one, not a cautionary tale, but history is filled with graveyards where we have amazing examples of tactical technological superiority, but we haven't always applied it in a smart way. And you can go all the way back to bow and arrow, gunpowder. So application, I think, is going to be essential, and I think we're going to have to do so in a strategic kind of way. So net, I am an optimist here, and the pessimist in me says if I'm not, we're going to be OBE anyway. So onward and upward.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Thank you both. That's a great way to get started here. And just, you're both talking about the data and, just this massive growth in data, both synthetic and real data. And the concern here, especially when you use that data from the not so good, sort of, Frank, to your point, deep fakes, et cetera, there's been a lot of excitement recently I've seen on these natural language processing and large language models that really are presenting an opportunity to maybe automatically detect misinformation and even in some cases deep fake technology at speed. So the real trick here is being able to do that at speed to prevent that getting out there and people starting to really believe in them because they're very believable. I'd love, Chip, if you, especially, I know you've been looking at this in particular in the intelligence space. Could you share your thoughts on the implications of the deep fake technology, maybe in general, and then how the intelligence and AI communities could manage those risks associated with those technologies, even maybe mitigate them?
Happy to do so. Yeah, disinformation is going to be one of those early challenges and big issues that will result from the advent of these new generative AI tools, because they're becoming democratized, right? Anybody around the world now can log on to OpenAI, start using and playing with ChatGPT for a nominal fee. So, the power of these algorithms are becoming available to all sorts of people, some who have bad intentions. And one of the easy wins for them is to create synthetic media, hyper realistic video, audio, other visual and text content is becoming available to more and more people, and they're using it. Recent case that caught a lot of attention is the Spamouflage network in China. That was responsible, according to Meta, which is the parent company for Facebook, who did this internal investigation. They discovered they had over 7,000 fake accounts that were putting out hyper-realistic, deep-fake videos and materials, kind of a new dawn in the capability of this network. Yes, there are some technical advantages that AI can give to our companies and our cyber defenders and our media companies to detect these things. But really, I think the technological fixes ultimately will have to be paired with other types of mitigation efforts. But there are companies like C2PA that are developing watermarking and other digital identification tools. Our friend Ellen McCarthy has launched a new effort, the Trusted Media Group, which is trying to bring together media companies and technologists and regulators to have a common understanding of, what are some commercial incentives that could be created. It turns out that your average viewer prefers real, accurate information as opposed to fake information, and when presented with the choice, usually will choose the real content. There's probably a commercial value that can be assigned to that. And I think that's some of the exciting stuff that they're working on there. And of course, in the education piece, right? We have to train ourselves, in particular our young people, to be more discerning consumers of information. The tech piece will help us, but I think in this this arms race, the advantages, certainly early days, are going to be to the bad actors, those who are seeking to sow chaos. And it will take a while before we have, great confidence in our technical fixes that they'll be able to address all the creative ways that the bad actors will come up with. I think our best bet in the meantime is to try to develop partnerships and look at commercial solutions and education in tandem with the technical fixes.
Oh, that's great, Chip. And it leads us right into sort of, you were talking about the Meta and how they acted on the spam and the fake news. It leads us right into this question of the public-private partnership and what that should look like in this space. And Frank, I'd love to get your opinion on that. You've done a lot in policy, and I'm sure, maybe you have some opinion about how should we shape that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I wish I had a very easy answer or even a right answer, but I've been saying for quite some time, long on nouns, short on verbs. We talk a lot about it, we don't always implement it. But here we are starting to actually move into the verb area, and it's going to be with different companies than the government historically. The Metas of the world are very different than the defense industrial base, which are very different than the critical infrastructure owner operators. And I hearken back to discussions in the early 90s at the Pentagon, C3I, and other places, and everyone was talking about the internet, and it was then you could easily balkanize it into the defense industrial infrastructure, the national information infrastructure, and the global. Well, we know how that went. The reality is you can't necessarily try to put parameters around it in the way we're traditionally thinking. So I do think one of the challenges, and I think the government is getting a whole lot better in this, and Teresa, dare I say, your good work, I think, has been instrumental in this. Years ago, it would be the not invented here set of issues that literally stymied innovation, and largely for security and trust reasons. So understandably, I mean, there were often disconnects between the analytics and the collectors and the operators. This is nothing new, but the reality is we are not going to, as a government, drive all of this innovation. What we need to be able to do is seize that, and we need to be able to figure out how we can work with industry, but also have those guardrails in place for some of the unique attributes that the government will be working with. So a long-winded way of saying, on the disinformation, misinformation side, that's going to be a challenge. That has always been a challenge. It's going to be now a challenge at scale. But we have a few other things, and my philosophy has always been start with a couple of manageable small efforts and then slowly build trust, slowly build confidence, and then hopefully the snowball rolls in the right direction, because it takes years to build that trust and nanoseconds to lose it. So let's go into that with both eyes open.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, trust is so fundamental to starting any kind of relationships and then keeping them, to your point. So, one thing I'd like to get both of your opinions on here is we've always talked about the intelligence workforce and just how important that is. In terms of using generative AI here, how can we benefit in the recruiting and training of our intelligence workforce? How do we move them to the next level so that they embrace this and are excited about it as well?
One advantage we have in this country is I think we have a next generation coming up through school that are truly digital natives. I mean, people want to live in this world, and they come with kind of innate skills, and we shouldn't overlook that. We should try to leverage that and unleash them when they do join the IC or other parts of the U.S. government. Beyond that, with regard to the current workforce, there's definitely going to be some training and reorienting and culture change that's going to be required, because as these tools become more capable and the IC grows more comfortable deploying them and using them, the nature of the work is going to change, and they will go from being tools to sort of co-pilots and advisors to eventually maybe becoming kind of full members of an analytic team or a collection team that is trusted and held responsible and accountable for doing parts of the job. And that is going to require IC experts to understand what these tools are capable of and what they're not, and how best to work with them. And it's going to require IC executives to come up with policies and approaches for what do we hold the humans accountable for, and how and what do we hold the machines accountable for. Because I guarantee you that in a future state where there's humans and machines working together, if a mistake happens, the humans are going to point the finger at the machine, right? And maybe not in every instance is that an accurate accounting of what went wrong. So anyway, just some things to think about. Recruiting, definitely going to need to have people who are expert in AI systems, and then probably people who are expert in cultural change and implementing process changes to adapt to a more digital world.
Hey, Teresa, I think Chip summed that up exceedingly well. I can't wait to see the machines getting their performance reviews and how they're penalized, or do they get more data then, dirty data? But no, in all sincerity, that is a key set of issues. And I love the idea of getting to the point where you can delineate between responsibilities and benchmark all of that. And we definitely need to get to that place. Let me just underscore one point, and that is, yes, we do have digital natives coming in, but I am concerned, and again, I don't think we can take for granted our technological edge here. And here, I think from a competitiveness standpoint, and I work day in, day out on cyber-related issues, and the workforce challenges there are massive. And when you look at higher ed, so after undergrad, the number of US citizens who are pursuing masters and postdocs and doctorals, it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So that doesn't mean the only answer is to keep doing what we've always done a little better. I think there is a chance to revisit that whole model, but I am concerned that other countries are, we talk about those that are pacing threats. I think in some areas they've outpaced. And when you look at technology writ large, honestly, technology will change, human nature remains consistent. So until you can sort of get that tie-in between better human-enabled technology and better tech-enabled human intelligence, I think we're never going to get to where we ultimately want to get to. But I can tell you one thing: if we're not investing in our future, we might as well give up. And we have a lot more to do in that domain.
Yeah. And we appreciate you being down there at Auburn doing just that, right? I really appreciate, Chip, both you and Frank joining and the great comments you had today, and look forward to continuing the conversation.